In 1871, Chicago burned to the ground. Officials blamed a cow. But when the smoke cleared, people found buried streets, oversized buildings, and a city that seemed far older than its official history suggested. Was Chicago simply rebuilt? Or did the fire erase the last traces of an older world? The fire nobody can fully explain. On the night of October 8th, 1871, a fire broke out in a barn on Chicago's DeKoven Street. Within 30 hours, it had consumed roughly 3.3 square miles of the city, destroying over 17,000 buildings and killing an estimated 300 people. The famous story blames Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicking over a lantern. That story has been disproven for decades. The real cause has never been confirmed. Some point to a neighbor stealing milk, others to sparks from a nearby fire days earlier that never fully went out. On that same night, an even deadlier fire tore through Peshtigo, Wisconsin, killing over 1,200 people, and smaller fires broke out simultaneously in Michigan. 4 fires, one night, one region. Officially, it was a coincidence of drought and wind. Unofficially, it's exactly the kind of detail that makes a legend impossible to kill. The Star Fort, hiding in plain sight. Long before Chicago burned, American cities were ringed with star-shaped forts, geometric fortresses with pointed bastions jutting out at sharp angles. You can still see them today. Fort McHenry in Baltimore, Castillo de San Marcos in Florida, dozens more scattered across the country. Online, a theory has spread. These forts weren't military at all. The star shape was actually a giant antenna, an energy harvesting device built by a lost advanced civilization. Cannons were just the cover story. Here's the twist. The records tell a different story, and it's honestly just as clever. The star shape wasn't decorative. It eliminated blind spots. A cannon mounted on a straight wall can't hit an enemy climbing right up against it. Angle the walls into points, and defenders can cover every inch of ground outside the fort from multiple directions at once. It's called bastion fortification, perfected by European military engineers in the 1500s to survive cannon warfare. It's brilliant design. It's also, provably, exactly what the records say it is. The White City that was built to disappear. In 1893, just 22 years after the fire, Chicago built something extraordinary. The world's Columbian Exposition, a fairground of dozens of massive neoclassical buildings, domes, colonnades, and statues so white and uniform, it was nicknamed the White City. 27 million people visited. Today, almost none of it survives, and that absence has fueled a theory that these buildings were actually remnants of a much older, more advanced civilization that got wiped from the history books. The real story is stranger in a different way. The buildings were never meant to last. Architects built them from a material called staff, plaster mixed with jute fiber, stretched over wood and steel frames, designed to look like solid marble for exactly one summer. After the fair closed, the city couldn't afford to maintain them, and in 1894, during a period of labor unrest, fires tore through the abandoned fairgrounds and finished the job. The White City wasn't erased in a cover-up. It was built on purpose to vanish. Doors too big for the people who used them. Walk through Chicago's Loop, and you'll find a specific, named architectural feature at the heart of this theory: the Chicago window. Pioneered in buildings like the Reliance Building, completed in 1895, these window bays used a large fixed central pane flanked by 2 narrower operable side panels, some spanning nearly the full height of a floor. Online, oversized windows and doorways like these get used as evidence of a taller, older race of builders. The answer here is architectural, not biological, and it's tied directly to Chicago's rebuilding. Before air conditioning and reliable electric lighting, architects needed a way to flood deep commercial floor plans with daylight while still allowing airflow, and the Chicago window was engineered specifically to solve that problem. in the steel frame buildings rising after the fire. Warehouses used the same logic for their oversized cargo doors, sized not for giants, but for horse-drawn wagons and later freight loading. It's not a mystery. It's a named, dated, patented solution to a specific 19th century problem, one that still has its own Wikipedia entry and a building you can walk into today. The city that was literally buried in mud. This is the detail that mud flood theorists always point to, and here's the twist. They're describing something that actually happened. They've just got the explanation backward. In the 1850s, decades before the fire, Chicago had a serious problem. The city was built on flat, swampy ground barely above lake level, and its primitive sewer system couldn't drain properly. The city's solution was audacious. Engineers used thousands of jack screws to physically lift entire buildings, sometimes whole city blocks at once, 4 to 14 feet into the air, then built up the street level underneath them with new grading and sewer lines. Some buildings were left behind and simply became partially buried at their original ground floor. It's one of the most ambitious engineering projects in American history, done in full view of the public, extensively documented in newspapers and city records. It wasn't a cover-up. It was arguably the opposite. One of the most celebrated public works projects Chicago ever completed. Power before the power grid. In July 1917, with World War I underway, a half-finished tower on Long Island was dynamited and sold for scrap. Newspapers at the time reported the U.S. government ordered its destruction, fearing German spies were using it as a lookout post. That tower was Wardenclyffe, built by Nikola Tesla between 1901 and 1902, funded initially by J.P. Morgan. Tesla's actual plan: a global network of towers transmitting messages and electrical power wirelessly, using the Earth itself as a conductor. Morgan pulled funding, skeptical that wireless power could ever be metered or monetized, and the tower sat abandoned for over a decade before the 1917 demolition. The spy story is real, documented in period press. It's exactly the kind of detail that makes "they blew up free energy" feel plausible. Stay with me, because the real answer is less dramatic, and honestly, kind of sad. Tesla was buried in debt. His hotel creditor foreclosed. A scrap company just cashed out an abandoned property. No government cover-up of working technology, just a broke inventor and a landlord who wanted paid. From there, online theories stretch further, claiming star forts and ornate 19th century buildings were themselves secret wireless power stations. No blueprints, no patents, no physical evidence anywhere. Tesla's tower was real. His ambition was real. Its downfall really did get tangled in wartime rumor. The leap from one abandoned tower to a suppressed civilization of free energy architecture is where the evidence runs out. Why old rebuilding photos look so strange. The clearest example of Chicago's impossibly fast rebuilding has a name, a date, and a story, stranger than the theory itself: the Palmer House. Hotel owner Potter Palmer's brand new luxury hotel had been open for just 13 days when the fire reduced it to ashes. As the flames closed in, architect John M. Van Osdell reportedly buried the building's blueprints in a basement pit packed with sand and clay to protect them, and they survived. That accidental discovery convinced Van Osdell that clay-based terracotta could serve as genuine fireproofing, and he used it to help rebuild the new Palmer House, which welcomed its first guests on November 8, 1873, and was aggressively marketed as the world's only fireproof hotel, complete with iron and brick construction, elevators, and electric lighting. Online, the speed and sophistication of buildings like this get used as evidence that Chicago wasn't really built from scratch, that construction crews were simply uncovering older, more advanced structures buried by whatever really destroyed the old world. What actually happened is that Chicago's rebuilding boom was a documented economic and engineering phenomenon. The city's stockyards, lumber yards, and rail lines were largely untouched by the fire. Prefabricated cast iron and mass-produced ornamental stone were already established industries, and wealthy owners like Palmer poured enormous personal fortunes into rebuilding immediately, racing each other to reopen first. Chicago's population tripled within 20 years of the fire. The Palmer House isn't evidence of an erased civilization. It's a directly traceable case where one man's basement gamble with a hole full of sand and clay quite literally reshaped how an entire city rebuilt itself. Why the legend won't die? Strip away the wilder claims, and what's left is still genuinely compelling. A fire whose true cause was never confirmed, alongside two other fires the same night. A fairground built deliberately to disappear, right on schedule. A city that once lifted itself out of the mud with its own hands. None of it proves a hidden, erased civilization, but it explains exactly why this story refuses to go away. The 19th century really was an era of audacious, half-forgotten engineering, and the gap between how strange that real history sounds and how little of it people actually learn in school is exactly the space this legend lives in. From a barn fire that killed 300 people to a fairground built to vanish on schedule, Chicago's real history was never boring. It just didn't need a cover-up to make it strange. Star forts weren't secret power stations. They were brilliant defense engineering. The White City wasn't erased. It was designed to disappear. The mud wasn't hiding a lost world. It was the result of a city lifting itself out of a swamp through sheer determination. Real history has a way of being wilder than the myth, if you're willing to actually go looking for it. If this kind of digging is your thing, hit like and subscribe. It's what tells me to keep pulling these threads. But here's the one thing this video never actually answered. What really started the fire? The cow story's been dead for decades, and the real ignition point on DeKoven Street has never been confirmed. 4 fires broke out across 3 states that same night, and nobody has ever fully explained why. That's next.